Welcome to the Holistic Career Change Podcast. Spoiler alert, we don't discuss conventional, linear, boring career change here. This is the place where we talk about finding an aligned career path that feels like an extension of who you are, where you get paid for being yourself. Forget personality quizzes, soul-crushing scrolling on job sites, and breaking your brain trying to find your why. Join me and many other career changers who've changed their career holistically by first defining who they are at their core and then using this blueprint to design a fulfilling career or business. We use the mind-body-soul approach, and we take into consideration the complexity and multidimensionality of all that you are and want to represent in the world. This is where purpose-led careers are born and built. I'm your host, Vilma Oseita. Let's go. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. Happy New Year, 2025. I really am not sure how that happened, but here we are. You know, over my wintering break, I was listening to a lot of podcasts because my newest obsession is intimacy wounds, okay? I have a new obsession of every couple of months. So I was diving deep into the topic, and you know what I found? When I was listening to all of these podcasts, so many of them have such incredibly painfully long introductions where the host would ramble about how their cat had diarrhea or how they couldn't find, sugar-free almond milk at Whole Foods. And I found myself getting so impatient, wanting them to just get to the topic of the podcast quicker. So because of that, I decided that I really am going to shorten my introductions on my podcast, and I'm just going to try to get to the point. Unless, of course, you like my random ramblings, then please let me know. Okay. Anyway, so I thought I'm going to start the new year by answering a very common question that many of you eager and impatient career changers often ask me, which is, how do I make a quantum leap in my career transition? How do I speed up this journey? Because I need to be there already, wherever that is, because this misaligned job is killing my soul. And listen, I totally get it. When you're ready for a change, you're ready, you're ripe. And you don't want to spend months or years slowly inching toward your dreams. And what's worse, many of you are not even clear what these dreams are. So where do you go? You want to make that bold move. You want a quantum leap that takes you from where you are to where potentially you can be and should be. So I want to share something with you that, if you actually apply, can help you, to quote many of you, quantum leap through this analysis paralysis and the transition much quicker. Here it is. The secret to making that quantum leap isn't actually about changing what you do. It's about changing who you are at an identity level first. This may sound abstract, okay, but stay with me, because this perspective shift is exactly what helped many of my clients significantly cut their transition time. It's actually wild. So this concept absolutely also transformed how I approached my career change years back, and how some of my clients can now skip those endless preparation steps and gradual baby to-do items on their list. And my hope here is that this will too shift your perspective on career change and hopefully will massively cut down your transition timeline as well. Here's the thing. Most people make a mistake. They approach career transitions like they're climbing this very long ladder. They think that they need to slowly accumulate the experience, gradually build their network, carefully save the money, meticulously plan every little step. And you know what? It's not wrong, but the reality of things is this. Only an absolute minority of individuals on this planet can delay their need for instant gratification and stick to the long-term goals. And when I say minority, I mean probably less than 10% of people can actually achieve success using a gradual baby step approach. Usually, they can do that only because it's aligned with a blueprint and their design. For instance, in human design, if you're a generator in a healthy state, you're building yourself, you're actually able to do that. You can have the slow build to mastery by focusing on one thing at a time and building upon what you already learned. which means 90% of us fail. We can't do that. And when it comes to career change specifically, I was actually reading an article on LinkedIn. There was a report recently that came out that showed that nearly 75% of professionals have indicated that they're considering career change, but only less than 20% make the leap. Why does that happen? Well, we may need to lean on psychology of change here to explain this. And don't worry, I'm not going to bore you with long, detailed concepts here, okay? However, I do want to introduce you to a brilliant, brilliant framework that explains exactly why most of us struggle with change. And if you can take it on and apply, it could potentially save you so much time spending in that transition agony and living in the liminal space of change. So the concept is called the logical levels of change, which was developed by neurolinguistic programming pioneer Robert Dilts, and it will provide you with an explanation as to why so many of us struggle with long-term commitment to change, including, yes, of course, career change, which is what we're here to talk about. So let me quickly break this down for you. So I want you to imagine this change as a pyramid with 5 levels. So I want you to imagine these levels as layers of your transformation. So from your physical reality all the way up to your deepest sense of purpose. Okay, so I want you to conjure up that image. So at the bottom of the pyramid, we have our environment, which is pretty self-explanatory. This is your physical reality. You can think of it as the physical and social context in which you exist. So everything from the everyday environment to social relationships and even your own body sits at this level. So this is where most people want to see the change happen, right? I want to physically see the change. However, in order to change our environment or physical reality, we know we need to change our behavior, or in other words, the action that we take, which then brings up to level 4, one level up. In other words, to get the outcomes that are different from your current results, you will need to exercise a different behavior. So like I said, this includes our actions, our reactions, our responses, our habits. Makes sense so far, right? So environment or circumstances is created by our behaviors or actions, and what affects our behavior and ability to take action, it's the next level, which is the skills or the capabilities that we actually have or have accumulated throughout our life. And I feel like, again, this layer is pretty self-explanatory. We essentially can only exercise the behavior if we have the skill or the capability to do it. For example, I probably can't create an app from scratch because I don't know how to code. I don't have the skill to actually do that. So to summarize, what we're talking about here is, like I said, this concept, by the way, is applicable to essentially any area of your life, especially if you want to change it. So this is not just about career change, which is any change. So our environments are shaped by our behaviors. In other words, by actions we take or actions we don't take. A note on this, I often hear my clients share with me, nothing happened throughout the week. There was not much movement in my career change journey, right? If we're catching up after a week, which I often ask them to rephrase politely to, I chose not to take action. Therefore, I don't have the result that I perhaps anticipated because I am co-creating my environment. So environments are shaped by actions. Actions are shaped by skills that we have or we choose to acquire. We then move to the next level, which is values and beliefs. And this level represents essentially how we perceive the world, through which lens we choose to look at the world and our reality. And our values will drive our behavior, of course, because they're our operating system in life or work, because we only do things that we deem important. Okay, if it's not important for us, we will probably be avoiding doing that. For example, we all know that I don't have time is an excuse. I don't care what you say, it's an excuse. You find time for everything that you find significant. So if you're not doing it, it is just not important enough to be prioritized in your life. Ouch. I know. Obviously, we could go deeper into this and attach another layer of unconscious limiting beliefs. So it's not always that straightforward. the uncomfortable truth is this, that we will prioritize what's important, meaning we may not be able to take the right action, even if you know what the right action is sometimes, if we're blocked by our limiting beliefs. For example, say you are currently looking for a new job and you know that networking is an important part of your career change. However, when you look at your results or how you show up, you find yourself struggling to connect with other people or avoiding to go to networking events because you may have a deep-seated limiting belief stemming from your childhood, which convinced you that, for example, no one ever wants to talk to me, or like I have nothing to contribute to conversation, I have nothing to offer. That's it. That's the one of the reasons why you won't be taking the action, right? It's not always so straightforward, but sometimes it is that literal. Okay. Moving to the next level, what lies beyond the level of values and beliefs? It's the level of identity, which is the star of the show today. So this level represents a concept of self, our personal identity. Some also refer to it as egos, who I am. And many times, by the way, you'll hear people say, well, I can't just drop everything and act differently because it's not who I am. Or I can't just get up and leave this career. It's not what I do, right? We're often conditioned to believe that our identity is fixed. However, the beauty of identity is that it can be redesigned if there is intention, if there is devotion to self-awareness, right? We're not set in stone. We're these magical, forever changing, expanding, growing, sometimes subtracting nebulous universes. And our identity is fluid, is adaptable, is ever changing if we choose to work with it. Which basically means that you can become whoever you wish to become. Now, if you want to feel happy and fulfilled, you only want to become that, whatever it looks like for you, only become that which is aligned with your essence, or I refer to it as your blueprint. That's when you'll be the happiest, but essentially you can become whoever you want to become. And I will come back to, by the way, how to make the most of this ever-changing identity in order to quantum leap. But let me first finish taking you through the levels of the pyramid. So we have identity, and on top of identity, we have our spirit or spirituality, which is the most sacred part of us, which is the invisible part of us, which is sometimes called the spiritual overlord. It's our connection to higher power, our sense of purpose. It's essentially our ultimate why. Why did we choose to come here? And what am I doing here on this planet? What is this all for? What is the purpose of this journey? So this is a level where a lot of these questions will live, and a lot of your answers will live there as well. So to summarize the pyramid, we have the environment, we have behaviors, we have skills, we have values and beliefs, and we have the spirit on top of the cake. So where's the issue, you'd say? That makes perfect sense. The issue, the challenge is that most of us have been taught, have been programmed to create change by only focusing at the bottom two levels, which is environment and behavior. So for example, something we can all relate, say you want to get fitter, right? So January 1st rolls in and you decide this is my year to get fit. What do you do then? Probably first you look at the environment. So you might join the gym, you might buy new workout clothes, you may get the latest fitness app. So you're changing your environment intentionally, you're doing that. Then at the behavior level, you probably might start wake up early because you want to work out before your work. You may follow a meal plan, you may start counting calories, etc. And guess what? Chances are when you focus on these two levels, that by the end of February or maybe mid-February, 80% of your efforts and commitment have died, like slow, painful death. You are not following your plan anymore. And then we're back to square one, making ourselves false promises again and not even believing them ourselves anymore. And that becomes super demotivating cycle. So how do we change this around? And how do we ensure we create the true lasting transformation that doesn't feel so effortful, where we don't need to rely on willpower so much all the time? Well, it's approaching the change you want to implement using the top down approach, meaning what you want to do, you want to flip this pyramid upside down, you want to flip it around, and you want to start by completely shifting the identity level first and by embracing this new identity. So instead of your old identity you might have cultivated for years where you're trying to get fit and fail and try again, instead you say or you claim, I'm someone who is already athletic and vital and healthy. I'm already that. This is the person I am. You can decide that and you can start embodying that identity today. And then you ask yourself, what would a fit, healthy person believe about themselves and their lifestyle, right? To go into the belief level. They would probably believe that health is non-negotiable for me. They would believe that movement is essential. I always find time for movement. Okay, if they believe that, what skills would they have? They probably would have practiced a skill of understanding at least the basic nutrition or how to work out and how to move in a healthy and like sustainable, safe way. Right, so that's the skills level. So then we go down. If they have that skill, if they have that values and behaviors, how would they show up? Or, what would be their behavior level? Well, they would probably naturally enjoy going to the gym regularly and being mindful of the food that they consume. And also, they probably would not need to force themselves to move because, again, this is who they are. It doesn't require effort when we're doing something who we believe we are. And then what happens in an environmental level? Well, naturally, they would find themselves or they would start creating environments that support and align with who they are. Maybe their partner would join this healthy lifestyle. Maybe they hang out more with active people just because of how much in common they'd have together, and they would be exchanging tips and recommendations. And before they know it, in a couple of months, the environment has changed that is now supporting who they are. Do you see how we really only need to focus on changing at the identity level, and the rest of the layers, the beliefs, the skills, the behavior, the environment, they all take care of themselves? This is honestly one of my favorite hacks, and this has been backed up by neuroscience too, which basically says that this identity level change activates different neural pathways than behavior level change. And when we change our identity first, we create new neural networks quicker that support that sustained transformation. And then suddenly we join the elite top 10 who can stick to their goals. And on top of that, by the way, if we add the energetic layer to that, when we lead with the shift in identity first, that changes our vibrational frequency almost instantly, which means that we become a match to this new life, new lifestyle, or new career that we're calling in so much quicker. We can manifest quicker. And as long as we don't, by the way, hang around too much with people who remind us of who we used to be, okay, so we always want to be mindful. Okay, so let me give you now a career change example to illustrate better how this could be applicable to you, because stories always help. So I want to use an example of my client, Jess. She previously used to work as a software developer. She did that for nearly a decade. And towards the end of her career as a developer, she was experiencing chronic stress, burnout. And the one thing that made complete difference in her health journey was acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine. So basically, she became fascinated with the principles of the TCM, I'm going to call that, and she decided that she wanted to transition into career as an acupuncturist. So to encourage the change, she was very intentional from the very beginning. The way she applied this identity first approach is that when she enrolled to study the traditional Chinese medicine, she made it a point not to call herself or show up in places as quote unquote someone who is studying TCM or considering a career in alternative healing. Instead, she cultivated a belief that she's already an advocate and a steward of traditional healing wisdom. Meaning that while she didn't necessarily have all the technical knowledge yet, she had an ability to mold her identity into someone who lived and breathed and represented those traditional healing principles. And she started intentionally approaching her life and health and relationships, literally every area of her life, through the lens of traditional Chinese medicine and the wisdom like yin yang balance or 5 elements and so on. I'm not familiar with all of them. So, which then obviously naturally changed what she values in life. So, we go into the value level. So, she started cultivating beliefs like health is a state of harmony, or the body has natural wisdom. And she began seeing all of the dis-ease patterns and connections through this traditional Chinese medicine philosophy and started cultivating prevention and balance over quick fixes, first and foremost in her own life. Okay. At the skill level, then, beyond formal studies, what that resulted in, she started practicing and observing seasonal changes and their effects on health. She learned to cook with medicinal herbs. She studied energetic properties of food. And she began, I think they call it the tongue observation, right, in the Chinese medicine. So she incorporated also Qigong and meditation in her daily routine. And not all of it was required by her school at all. All of that happened because there was a change in her identity and how she perceived herself, which then naturally made her an embodiment of these practices in the philosophy. Right, which then trickled in her behavior level because she aligned her daily rhythms with traditional Chinese medicine principles like waking up with the sun as much as possible or eating according to the TCM dietary wisdom or practicing mindful observation of nature cycles. So she began also, I think she told me, keeping a journal of her observations about seasonal changes and their effects on well-being. Do you see how powerful that is? And naturally, then her environment, the last layer transformed organically. She needed to use willpower to do anything because of the change in how she perceived herself, what she believed in, and what she did. She transformed also her living space. She felt inspired to use the traditional Chinese medicine principles by setting up a meditation corner, growing her own herbs, organizing her kitchen to support the cooking that she was now learning about. So the biggest change, like I said, was really created by her seeking out the traditional medicine community events by joining study groups and attending lectures and workshops with the seasoned practitioners. And that basically, she then began building relationships with practicing herbalists and acupuncturists and so on and so forth. And by the time she completed her master's program, she already felt like an actual practitioner with supportive community, a list of potential clients who had been following her journey on social media, and many of them had expressed interest in working with her, whereas many of her course mates, they were just focusing on studying. And when they completed the studies, they felt these new, fresh baby practitioners who did not identify as healers yet. Some of them never even opened up the practices in the end, not because they didn't want to do it or didn't believe in it, it's because they lacked the self-belief and they hadn't practiced this new identity. That's how powerful this intentional practice can be. And again, I want to notice how Jessica didn't wait for someone to give her permission to start embodying this new identity, this new version of herself, because this is what we're taught, right? We're taught like, oh, when you have this, paper, you can say it. No, she claimed it herself. She didn't wait for the fancy piece of paper from accredited school to confirm this identity. She built it up way before anyone else approved of or validated this new path for her. And that is available for you too. If you embrace change by leading with and establishing your new identity before you have any proof, your career journey can actually feel fun and flowy and organic. And the best part, which is my favorite part, it won't require so much of your willpower and struggle that we would experience when we are starting at only environmental and behavioral levels. Again, which is what usually many career changers do. They start enrolling into school or waiting to finish, and then they're afraid to claim this new title or role, and they're waiting for anyone else to approve of them, which then makes their transition long and shaky and uncertain, and honestly just unnecessary, painful, and confusing. We can totally avoid that. So if you're listening to this and wondering how that applies to you, I want you to think about whatever career path, whatever business, whatever role that you've been dreaming about. And I want you to think about the people you admire in this field that you follow, that you fantasize about what it would feel like to lead their life or to have their business and how lucky they are. And then I want you to ask yourself, who would you have to be to create that life or business? How would you have to carry yourself if you were them today? How would you introduce yourself? How would you dress and how would you present yourself if you already were that and there, wherever they are? Who would you hang out with? What content would you consume? What content would you consume? What would you invest your money into? Like, these are such amazing questions. How would you treat promises to yourself? What would be different about you, about your identity? Who would you be? Okay. For example, say you want to build a coaching business. I know there are a lot of people who are listening to my podcast who want to become coaches. How would you show up as a fully booked coach today? In spite of the fact that you don't have clients. Perhaps that means that as opposed to offering unsolicited advice and coaching to all your friends and family for free, you'd stop doing that because as an established coach, you have a practice and you have boundaries. So if someone needed your support, you'd invite them to have a coaching session with you. That's a major shift in your energy. And then when you'd meet people, you'd not introduce yourself as someone who's hoping to transition into coaching. You'd say you are a coach who's about to open up your schedule to take on clients. Also, you wouldn't emphasize your day job that you currently probably still have. Actually, you probably wouldn't even mention it at all because you would be owning this new identity. Who would you spend your time with? Probably, I would say, you would meet other healers and therapists and coaches and get to know them. And you would find out how they work and how they organize the practices. And you might go to workshops to expand your coaching skills. You would become known in this circle of practitioners as a peer already. And these people would address you and treat you as an equal as well, which would then help you further own and solidify this new identity that you're embracing. You might also invest into courses on how to scale your business, not just how to build it, but if you embody and establish, say, coach energy, you're thinking of scaling then. So you would invest in that sort of courses if you have, the income to invest. Do you see what we're doing here? You practice becoming who you aspire to become today before you have proof. And if you lead with identity first, the action taking will become so much easier and less confusing. And this applies to any other career path. And obviously, just caveat, I'm not suggesting to lie to people about your credentials or fake it till you make it. I don't like that concept. It's about becoming the energy you want to attract. Believe that it's yours until it becomes you. So claiming and embodying the identity first, making sure you plant yourself in these aligned communities. And if anything, the clients who I have seen transition the fastest, by the way, most of them have started very early with this, being very intentional when it comes to meeting and connecting with the future peers. Whether in person or online networking events, you guys were so spoiled with so many options when it comes to connecting these days, in person, virtual. So use it intentionally, lead with identity first, and notice how much easier and smoother and more enjoyable this transition becomes for you and how you can quantum leap. Okay. So I want to leave you with some questions to answer, and then not just answer, but actually start embodying. Okay. Who are you becoming? In other words, what identity are you claiming today? What does this person believe? What are their beliefs and what are their values? What does their typical day look like? How do you behave? What do they prioritize? What do they spend time on? What are the non-negotiables for them? And what environments do they thrive in? How do they live? Who do they surround themselves with? Really, really tune in and answer those questions, ideally intuitively. And remember that your transformation doesn't start with updating your LinkedIn profile. It's about becoming the person you're meant to be first. And when you step into your authentic identity first, everything else naturally falls into place. And as per usual, I'd love to hear what identity you're stepping into. Not who you're trying to be, but who you already are at your core. Please share with me on Instagram or send me a text through the link in the show notes. Have a magical week. Thank you for spending time with me today. If you enjoy this content, please make sure you subscribe to this podcast and leave a quick review to help us share the message of aligned work with the world. And if you'd like to learn more about how to find and transition into your very own purpose-led career or business that feels like getting paid for being yourself, make sure you check out the episode notes below. Have a wonderful week.